Today, I'm going to walk through my entire process on how I evaluate venues and how to evaluate your venue's current situation, and then what steps you need to make in order to book more revenue in the next year. Hi, my name is Teresa Casey. I'm the owner of the 5-Star Venue Method, and the venues I work with, on average, make 200 to 300% increases in their month-to-month booked revenue. Now, when I say 2 to 300% increases in month-to-month revenue, those are $30,000 to $40,000 in increased booked revenue that they see after implementing the 5-Star Venue Method. And what's included in that is that I have helped them learn how to sell their venue without feeling pushy. At the same time, still getting complete clarity on what their tour guests are actually thinking and whether or not they truly want to book their event with the venue. So if you are a venue owner or manager who is trying to figure out how you increase your revenue and how you can possibly make more money in the next year, then you're in the right place. While the steps that I lay out are not easy or fast money, if you're willing to be flexible, dedicated with how you handle your tour process, and willing to put yourself out there and get out of your comfort zone, I can absolutely assure you that you will see an impact. Now, before we dive in, I just want to make sure that you know that there are going to be some spreadsheets, templates, scripting, things like that are all included in this entire process. And all of the things that I'm talking about today can be found within my 5-Star Venue Method Skool group. It's a really affordable online community where you not only get access to everything that I talk about in the next several minutes, but you will also get discounts on different products that I talk about that I have actually implemented in real life venues to help enhance the overall tour experience. Not only that, but it gives you access to a community of venue owners and managers just like you who are trying to do the same thing and working towards that goal of increasing their revenue. So it's a great way to know that you're in the trenches, not alone, but with other people who are trying to do the same thing. That link is below, but let's go ahead and get started on how to actually evaluate your current financial situation and then decide what you need to do in order to change it. Now, the first thing that I do when I connect with a venue is I ask them about their numbers. We really can't take any next steps in the process until we have a clear understanding of where they at this point in time. Now, the two things that I use to measure where a venue is at is first the amount of tours that they are getting in the doors on average, and then the amount of bookings that they're actually getting from those tours. What that actual metric is called is a conversion rate. This is a term that's used industry-wide as well as throughout the entire business world as a metric to understand how well you're actually doing at selling whatever product you have. Now, in the venue world, what I call industry standard is to have at a minimum of 10 tours come through your doors per month that gives you the chance to be able to book one of those events. If you have 10 tours that come in the month and you're booking 3 of them, that is a 30% conversion rate, and you would be considered industry standard. Anything less than that means that we have some work to do. And it is okay if you have some work to do. Not every individual who gets into the venue business has a clear understanding of what it takes to sell well and sell essentially a high ticket item. And that brings me to a point that I want to make sure I remind you of. Your product is a high ticket item. Typically, when you are booking an event, you're often dealing with individuals who are going to be paying you around $1,000 to $10,000. And with that amount of money comes with it a certain amount of subconscious expectation that individuals have when they're talking to you and when they are trying to decide whether or not they want to book their event with you. What that means for us as venue owners and managers is when we are selling the space that we want to cater to those subconscious feelings and show them that it is completely worth it to invest with you in order to host a fantastic event. Now back to the numbers. If you have not done this before, I'd like you to take a moment and figure out what is the average amount of tours that I have coming in my door each month, and on average, how many of those events actually book with me. One easy way to do this is to just figure out how many events you gave in the last 12 months and then divide that by 12, and you'll have an average of how many bookings you're actually getting from the tours. Tours, sometimes people aren't as good about tracking, so you may have to do some work to figure out exactly how many tours you gave in the last year, but I'd still like you to take the time to do that and then divide that by 12 and get that average of how many tours you gave each month. Once you have those two averages, you can go ahead and figure out the percentage of your actual conversion rate. This is your starting point, and you are going to want to record that starting point somewhere if you haven't already. You may have a CRM or customer relationship management system where you keep track of the individuals who come into your space, maybe the events that you've actually booked. But you do need some sort of way to track your numbers, not just the information that the guests are giving you. Now, when I work with clients, I give them a spreadsheet that I created where they pretty easily can go in each day and track the tours that they've given, if there's been any events that have booked, and the dollar amount that that booked revenue is going to bring in. Now, I understand that this is a little bit different if you require a deposit. We are counting your deposit within your booked revenue. So while you may not see that total dollar amount the day that those individuals booked, at the end of the year, you'll be able to look back and have an understanding of what your actual revenue was as long as you have fulfilled all of those events. Now, I'm going to go ahead and pull up my venue, tour, and bookings tracker for this year in 2026. And this is something that is a really easy snapshot for you to have an understanding of how well you're doing, how things are tracking, and if you see any consistency within certain months, your conversion rate, or if there's any outliers that feel like they just don't necessarily belong. It's a good way for you to understand your trends and understand where you're at as a business. This main sheet, the goals of the year tab, is something that you don't touch. It is auto-populated based on the actions you take within the other tabs. And the other tabs are just the months of the year. So as you can see, if we go into January, if we have all of these different tabs such as tours scheduled, tours given, booked events, commission if you give commission or if you receive commission, booked event amount, and then the client and prospect name and the event date. I also include site traffic because this is a good way to get an understanding of how well your website is actually converting individuals who visit the website into tours. I have in parentheses unique users because you don't want to just count overall your site traffic, because there are individuals, including yourself, who may visit your website more than once, and you don't want to count repeat users in your site traffic. We really just want to have an understanding of how many unique users we're seeing each day. So as an example, I'll just go ahead and input some different information into these cells just so you can see how it accumulates. So for instance, if we had a tour that's scheduled on this date, and then we know that we're going to have another on this date, we would input those tours as 1 and 1. And perhaps we know we have 2 tours that are coming up on the 5th. On the 1st, we would go ahead and confirm whether or not those individuals actually showed up and we gave the tour, because we also want to understand, are we having too many no-shows? Do we have junk traffic that's coming in and scheduling tours? Or do we need to do some work before the tour in order to ensure that those individuals actually show up and don't waste our time? So if we gave the tour that day, we would go ahead and input that number, and then say that we had an event from December that decided to go ahead and book. We would put a 1 here, and if we were being paid commission, we would put that number as well, and then we would put the booked event amount. So perhaps it was $7,500. That was the total amount that those individuals booked the event for. Then I might just put their name so that I know who exactly booked and the event date. Maybe I know that they're going to do a wedding in July and I'm just picking a random day. And you would put that there. Now, if we go back to our goals for the year, you can see that this has updated with the tour amount that we have given, how many booked events we have, and the total booked revenue. You also have your commission, which all adds up. Now, at the end of the year, if you're really consistent with inputting all of your information, you'll have a total here that will give you a great snapshot to understanding how well you actually did in the last year. And it also gives you something that you can take to the following year and compare to. And the more you do that, the better understanding you'll have of your business and get an idea of where exactly you can tweak things in order to improve. So as an example, let's go back and we'll add some additional events. So say we had one other booked event here, and we'll just put 6,500. And then we gave maybe two tours. You can see our conversion rate at the bottom is very high. Now, this is atypical, and I'll show you an actual venues spreadsheet in just a moment, but I just wanted to give you an idea of how it all adds up and gives you, again, this snapshot of where your venue actually is and how you can improve going month to month and then year to year. You'll see in this column, it also tracks your conversion rate. Now, again, I had mentioned to you that 30 to 40% conversion rate tends to be average nationally. I find though that a lot of venues are below that. And when they implement the 5-star venue method, they actually are able to increase over that. But of course, there are a lot of factors that go into it. And overall, we just want to see the average at the end of the year landing in a good place. So here is an example of a venue that completed their full tour and bookings tracker over the course of the year. And this is an actual real venue and their actual real stats. And you can see how things ebbed and flowed throughout the year. And at the end of the year, we can see that they gave 209 tours. They booked 84 of them, and their total booked revenue. So this is not fulfilled revenue. This is not their deposits that they received. This is the revenue that they booked from their tours, was just over $500,000. This individual does receive commission, so you can see that their commission was added up here, and you can see that their average conversion rate is about 38%. Now, in my opinion, I would say that that could go up a little bit because there is some work that they could do in their actual sales tour process, but we still know, all right, overall, all things being said and done, we are at least on average in the range that we need to be, and actually the top of the range for national average. Now, one other thing that I'd like to show you that you have the opportunity at any time to go ahead on my formal website, 5starvenue.com, and use our potential revenue calculator. So if you are an existing venue, and this calculator is really made for venues who are already in the business and have some understanding of where they're at, you can use this in order to understand how implementing the things that we're going to talk about in a little while can actually impact your venue business. So if we look here, and again, this is on the 5-Star Venue website, you just need to put in your average revenue per event, the average tours that you give in 1 month, and the average events that you actually book per month, and it will spit out at you an idea of where your revenue could be if you improved your tour process and your overall selling skills in order to book more events. So let's go ahead and do it just to give you some inspiration. So say that my average revenue per event was maybe around $5,500. And the reason I'm going with these $5,500 to $7,500-ish ranges is because that's what I see on average when individuals are charging for a wedding event or a reception. There are venues that I work with who will be more hosts of things like baby showers, birthday parties, smaller corporate events. And that's perfectly okay. You can still use the calculator. It will still give you an understanding of where your revenue could be. But for the sake of understanding more of those larger wedding type events, that's what I'm going with. So here we have $5,500 is our average revenue per event, and say the average tours per month was 12. Like we're just making it over that 10 tour a month range. And perhaps out of those events that we book per month, we're booking maybe 3, maybe 4 on a good month, but generally we go with 3. So how much could you be making if you were to implement the things that we're going to talk about? This is probably your existing reality. So you're probably around 36 events in a year. Your estimated annual revenue is around $198,000, and your conversion rate currently is about 25%. When we implement the methodology of the 5-star venue, we typically see a 10 to 20% increase in points. And I just like to give realistic expectations, but often I also see it go higher than even that 10 to 20 point increase in percentage of conversion rate. But let's go ahead and look at the calculator the way it is. We have a 40% conversion rate once things are changed. We see that we are actually able to book 58 events in a year. Our estimated annual revenue increases to $316,800, and that is a increase in revenue of about $118,000. And I just like to put in your mind, what could that do for your venue? How would that impact your life if you were able to bring in an additional $100,000? Probably make some sort of impact. Maybe you could do some of those renovations to make your venue even more desirable. Maybe you could invest it more into some marketing so that your tour numbers actually go up and you're able to convert more of those tours, hopefully at that 40% conversion rate, which could be even greater returns in the next year. But giving you that vision and that understanding that small changes can make a big impact is really important to me, because in order to have that drive to continue to change and put ourselves out there, having a number like that to shoot for is something that is so important. So now that we have talked about our numbers, let's go ahead and talk about if you don't have 10 plus tours per month. Now, there are a couple things that we need to focus on if we aren't making that 10 tour a month threshold. And the first thing that I typically ask is, do you have any external marketing going on? If so, what is that marketing? And do we think that it's actually worth it? Now, a lot of individuals, they're investing in things like The Knot or Wedding Wire. And honestly, I am not always the biggest fan of those platforms. Reason being, I find that you get a lot of junk traffic to your website that doesn't actually convert. Now, having a presence is perfectly okay, but I don't necessarily think that you have to pay tons of money in order to have the top spot on the page. My personal recommendation in terms of spending marketing dollars is always to move towards meta ads. Now, I have a full out training on meta ads on my Skool group that you can go through, and it will walk you through step by step on how to run meta ads. And not only that, I also have Canva templates that you can use. Take the design that we have tested and shown actually works well within meta ads, put in photos or video of your venue, and you are welcome to use those as your own. I also give you access to headlines and primary text, which are key pieces that you need to have in your ads when you're running meta ads. And I have tested ones that actually perform incredibly well compared to what you might just throw out there. The reason I bring up the headlines and the primary text when it comes to your meta ads is that recently I have found out that some venues say that they're running meta ads, but they're not running it via the same platform within Meta that I assumed they were. There is a way to run a Meta ad via your Facebook page in the business manager, but it is very simplistic. And if you are running a meta ad that does not require you to have a pixel on your website in order to measure conversion events specifically, then you are wasting your money. Because the whole purpose of marketing in the first place is that we want people to take the next step. And the next step that they need to take is to book a tour at our venue. We should not be marketing for Facebook likes. We should not be marketing for simple website visits, because the algorithm on Meta can optimize really easily to find people who will visit your website or who will click, but those people are not necessarily the people who are there to book a tour. So that is not a metric that we should be optimizing for. Again, the world of meta ads can feel complicated, but if you take the time to go through the training and have an understanding of how to actually run your meta ads, it makes it quite simple, and you will see such a better return on your advertising dollar. Now, if you were listening to all of this and you're like, yeah, Teresa, I know I've run meta ads in the more advanced way and I know that I'm doing them legitimately, here are some metrics that you should shoot for. The first is your unique outbound click-through rate. So these are unique users. So one person, not someone who comes back and clicks multiple times. It is one user who actually clicks on your ad and then goes somewhere. They go to your website. They're not just clicking on your ad. They're not just clicking somewhere. They're actually making it to your website. That metric, your CTR, should be 3% or higher. If it's not, then we need to work on your ads and have the communication and the headlines and the copy work better to get the right people. Your cost per unique outbound click, that needs to be $1.50 or less. If your unique per outbound click is higher than that or reaching towards $8, $9 a click, that means that we really need to work on your ads and they are not optimized well in order to get the right people to your website. And the last thing that I want you to look at with your ads is your total cost per result. When you have a pixel installed correctly on your website, you should have accurate conversion metrics from Meta within your ads. And it varies greatly per venue, where your location is, all of the different things. But on average, you should be seeing a tour booked per $15 to $60 that you are spending on meta ads. When you are running them correctly, you should be getting over that threshold of 10 tours per month. And then you know that you have enough individuals and prospects to work with in order to actually accurately measure the things like your conversion rate or how well you're doing at your selling process. The other great thing about Meta, and the reason I like them so much, is because they do give you so many opportunities to tailor who exactly you're looking for. They are able to target the individuals who have just recently gotten married, the individuals who have just gotten engaged, or if you're a smaller venue, those who are looking to have a baby shower. There is so much customization there that is so advantageous for your business. The last thing that I would just say is, if you are currently running great meta ads, I have also seen it where not a lot of people know that they need to adjust the age range that your ads are being shown to cut off at about age 55 to 60. And this is no diss on age or individuals who are past that 55 to 60 threshold, but we find that those individuals, if they aren't cut off within the age range, tend to eat up a lot of your ad spend, and then you end up spending a lot of money on individuals who are just there to click but not actually act. All right, now that we've talked about how to increase your tours with meta ads if you aren't at that tour threshold, or on the contrary, if you have a great conversion rate and you need to increase your tours in order to get more booked revenue, you can also run meta ads as well. But we also, in addition to running the meta ads, want to make sure that we're running them to a website that is optimized. So what does it mean to have an optimized website in the first place? Essentially, you want to make sure that your website is doing what it needs to do in order to get more people into your doors so that you can give them a tour and then hopefully book them. So I'm going to show you a real life website of of a venue that I have personally worked with. And while this website is maybe not the most beautiful or the most aesthetically perfect, like there are some things on this website that honestly, even with the top bar, like it drives me absolutely nuts that we have all of this white space here and all of these different tabs, and they all should be on one line. But you know what? It's still converting individuals, and that's what matters. And we have what's important above the fold. And particularly what is also important is that the mobile version of this website works well. That is also something that I see a lot of venues do. They completely forget that the mobile version of their website exists, and when they go to it, sometimes it's completely broken. But overall, there are a couple rules of thumb that I have when it comes to creating a great venue website that will convert for you or convert your visitors into tours. And the highest real estate area of your website is really when individuals first show up to it. Individuals will spend less than 10 seconds deciding if they're going to stay and do more on your website before they're gone. And that means that everything above the fold on your website is incredibly important. Now, if you haven't heard the term above the fold, essentially what it means is that anything that you see when you first go onto a website and you're looking at it, that is above the fold. It's everything that you see before you have to scroll. And there's a couple things that I want to make sure are above the fold. The first is your actual venue name and your venue address. If you don't have your name and address there, people will get confused very quickly on if they're in the right place. So make sure that you have the venue name and you have the address. The second thing that you want to do is you want to have social proof, ideally above the fold, because when you have social proof, and social proof are things like testimonials, statements that your past clients have made about how fantastic you are, that is going to subconsciously give your visitors more pressure that they should probably learn more about you, because if someone else thinks that you're awesome, you probably are that awesome. And if at all possible, we want to have that be one of the first things that our visitors see. While it's wonderful to have Google reviews, a lot of times people skip the Google reviews and they just go to your website. So if we can take some of those Google reviews and put them on our website in a instantaneous place that they can see them, then that is going to be a huge advantage. The next thing that you want to make sure you have above the fold is photos or video of your actual space. Please do not use stock photos, because people feel hoodwinked, that they see some sort of visual, and then if they come and tour your space and they don't see that exact visual, they'll think, what were you playing at? This doesn't actually look like your space at all. So in this situation, we have a video, which is really nice, but it doesn't have to be a video. It can be a photo of your space. Please do not do up close photos of brides and grooms, up close photos of table arrangements or floral arrangements, because that is not what you're selling. On our website, we want to highlight what we are selling, which is your space. And then the last thing that I want to encourage you to have above the fold is a call to action, or what to do next. And in this case with venues, I really don't see any other option that you should have other than book a tour. And if you can embed a calendar link similar to what we have here, this is a Calendly link that's actually embedded within the page, then that is ideal, because we're reducing the amount of steps that it takes someone to actually take action and get into our doors. Now, even if they don't book a tour right away and they come back to it, at least they've seen it. And it's the first thing that they actually saw when they came onto the website. So if they do decide they want to book a tour, they know where to go. In addition, we have buttons all along the rest of the page that reiterate schedule a tour, but if for some reason they don't click those buttons, they would still likely remember, when I first came to the page, I know that I saw that calendar link. As we scroll down, and really I focus on your landing page or the home page of your website first. This website, for instance, has a ton of additional information and kind of goes overboard when it comes to all of the different things that they offer. But in this situation, we just want to make sure that we have continued social proof. So building that subconscious pressure that we are a great place to be. We're not having paragraphs of information about how great we are. We, in bullet points, Have the things that people like when they book a venue: consistent communication, a team that is dependable, some things that are included, some of the highlights that are within the venue. And then we have the details. When is the venue available? Is there easy parking? All of the things that you consider a value add when it comes to your venue, include those, but include them short and sweet. Make it digestible. We want to make their decision process as easy as possible. If you scroll down here, again, we have address and phone, but we have continued social proof. I always say there is no such thing as too much social proof. It can only be an advantage. All right, so now that we have covered how to understand your numbers as a venue and how to understand where you currently are and then where you need to go. And we've also talked about whether or not running meta ads is something that would be valuable for you. We also have talked about how to optimize your website so that if you do run meta ads, that you are running them directly to a website that is actually going to convert for you versus just a website where you might have visitors and then they will leave within the first 10 seconds. And that was a lot to cover. Whew. So if you need to, go ahead. Don't mind this is an old coffee cup, nice old coffee cup. Grab a cup of coffee. And we will continue on the journey of how to help increase your revenue as a venue. The next two things that we're going to focus on are our tour experience and how we are actually giving our sales tour, because that's truly what it is. It isn't just a, here's my space, isn't it nice? We need to be strategic with our sales tour so that we are actually closing the tours that we bring in and end up with some really great bookings. But there's some things that we want to make sure that we do during our tour to ensure that they actually go well. First things first, you want to make sure that your tour is around 45 minutes to an hour long. I've worked with venues where their tour process lasts all of 15 minutes. They bring people in, they walk them around the space, they say, do you have any questions? The people don't have any questions. They leave them with some info and they walk them right out the door. And from that point, they have no idea what's going to happen next, if they'll ever talk to them again. And chances are is they probably won't. So here is the first thing that we want to focus on when we're doing our sales tour, and that is to create a really holistic hospitality experience, because the reality is that you are in the hospitality business. We want individuals to feel like they just walked into a high-end hotel as opposed to a building brick and mortar space. Now, you don't have to completely renovate your space in order to feel like a high-end hotel hospitality experience. There are some things that you can do that are easier than you might think that help create that overall feeling without having to completely empty your bank account. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to make sure that we're touching on all of the senses when our guests are touring. And that starts at the very moment that they start to interact with us when they walk through the doors. The first thing that I want to talk about is the sense of smell. Now, it is very different for your space to smell clean than it is to smell beautiful. When you smell beautiful, individuals not only think to themselves, wow, this is a clean space, but they also think, what is making it smell so good? Our olfactory system is the closest sense that is tied to our memory. And that means that you are going to have a bigger impact and have more chance of sticking in that potential client's memory if you smell beautiful. My recommendations with how to make this happen. First, you can always do a commercial scent solution. That is how I started working with venues in the first place, as I was providing those scent solutions for them. My company there is called Pro Roma. We do everything from casinos to large scale venues to smaller spaces and even tiny little bridal shops. But the key here is that we have luxury smelling scents that are hypoallergenic and are not going to cause issues or liability to your business. You're welcome to use candles if you like that scent and that atmosphere. If you don't allow candles during your events, then I wouldn't recommend doing that, because you want to stay consistent with the rules that you set in place and the experience you're giving when you're giving the tour. You could also do some sort of essential oil. The one thing with essential oils is I would just be careful that you're using one that doesn't have any large potential allergens. For instance, I am highly allergic to hazelnuts, and so any sort of essential oil that might have any natural nut or hazelnut oil in it would be very problematic for me. Or you could have individuals, for instance, people love lavender, but if you're using a lavender essential oil and someone is allergic to that, then that could be a problem. So whatever you use, just make sure that it is going to be liability free for you. Another option that I see often is something like Glade plugins. That does work, but I find that you do have to replace those often. So it's really up to you what your budget can handle and what you feel comfortable doing. In terms of choosing a scent, I wouldn't go crazy trying to find the perfect scent. Just pick something that you feel like maybe fits your space and that you like. Scent is one of those things that's super subjective. It's like art. You're going to have the majority of people that probably like it, and you're going to have some people who don't. So anytime that you put something in place with your business, including scent, always go for the 90% rule. 10% of people may not like it. It may not be their thing, but 90%, if they do enjoy it, it is going to be an overall benefit to your business. The second thing that we want to make sure we do is touch on sound. I always say that silence is not golden when it comes to our tour experience. Having some sort of instrumentals playing in your space when you're giving the tour not only creates a more comfortable environment, but it can actually scientifically calm any nerves or feelings of unsuredness. Is that a word? Unsuredness? It eases any feelings of being unsure that a potential client might have. Not only that, but it really adds to the mood and can place your potential client in the space and in that moment of, if I had my event here, here's how it might feel. The next sense that we want to touch on is sight. So this, obviously, you're going to have some things that you can't control when it comes to the way that your building looks unless you built it completely from scratch. But if you are one of those individuals where you maybe renovated your space or you had the existing building and structure originally, there's only so much you can do. But there are things that you can put in place as soon as those venue doors open that make a great impact and will really surprise and delight your guests. One thing that I very much recommend is having some sort of signage that not only states who you are as a venue so they know that they are in the right place and it reaffirms them that they are here and they're meant to be here, but personalize that sign. Put something on the sign like, "Welcome Blake and Teresa to your venue tour." You can do this as simply as having a chalkboard. One thing that you do have to think about is you might have to change the chalkboard each tour that you have. If that is inconvenient, then a digital option may be better for you. With the clients that I work with, we give them a digital sign and we have them work with a software that actually allows them to schedule out what their sign says. So in between tours, they don't have to manually change it. The sign will change on its own. This guests absolutely love. People love having things personalized. They love to see their own name and be recognized. And as small as it is, when you have a sign when your guests walk in that says their name and welcomes them, it only enhances that overall experience and makes them feel like, yes, I am meant to be here and I like this place. The next thing that we want to touch on is taste. Now, it is very common in higher end hotels for when you arrive for them to offer you a beverage, even if it is a water or a coffee, but it is available. And we want to touch on the sense of taste because it also releases endorphins. And when we have more endorphins flowing during our tour experience, it's going to impact those guests in a positive way. And again, give them something else to compare to other than just price when they're comparing you to the venue down the street. So when your guests arrive, offer them quickly, "Could I offer you a water or a coffee?" Maybe you have some other select sodas available. Maybe you have a lemonade. It's really up to you and what you feel comfortable with. But my recommendation is to consider investing in a small mini fridge that you have visible and some sort of coffee maker. If you do coffee, please do not just get yucky, cheap coffee. At least have something that you know is going to taste decent and have some creams and sugars available for those who would like to take it. But anytime you walk into a friend or family member's house, It's often customary to say, do you need anything to drink or what could I get for you? Make sure you do that at the time when you welcome in your guests, because you are signaling to them that you understand hospitality and you are going to take great care of them. Another time that we use taste in our tour is towards the end when we talk about our budget. And we'll talk about that in a little while. But when we are going to start talking about money and maybe something that might feel a little bit more uncomfortable for you or uncomfortable for them, and honestly, once you get into it, it really doesn't feel that uncomfortable at all and it feels very normal. But you can offer them some sort of sweet treat. Some venues I've worked with just like to have a bowl of candy available and they'll offer them some sort of refreshment that way. One that I really love is one of the venues that I work with. They individually wrap these heart-shaped sugar cookies and they will offer it to the guests before they dive into that budget conversation. Sometimes people do eat them while they're sitting there, sometimes they don't. The interesting and advantageous piece of that I have noticed is when your guests come and they may have small children, having that cookie is a massive highlight. And it's something that I guarantee you most venues are not doing. The last sense that honestly I don't do a whole lot with, but I just encourage you to be mindful of, is the sense of touch. So when your guests sit down at a table to have a discussion with you, what does the furniture feel like? Does it feel cheap and like it's going to fall apart? Or is it comforting and comfortable and sturdy? When you have documents or packets that you share with them that include all of your pricing and your packages, what does that paper feel like? Are you giving them a piece of printer paper or are you providing them with a really luxurious feeling type of item? Another area that we will talk more about is when we give a thank you gift. So I really encourage you at the end of your tour of coming up with some sort of thank you gift to show the individuals that you toured that you really appreciate them taking the time to tour your space. And this gives you such a leg up against the competition because nobody does this. One great example is that with a venue that I worked with recently, we came up with a car air freshener that was actually in the scent of this venue space itself. So they get to take a little piece of the venue home with them. And it was held not just on its own. We didn't just hand them a car air freshener. We actually put it in a small jewelry type box with a pocket that opened up. And the feel of the box was almost like this really soft, suede type feeling box. And it just created this feeling of luxury, even though the gifts themselves cost about $5 a piece. As opposed to thinking of yourself as just an information giver, consider yourself a concierge service who is truly there to serve the client. When you give a guest that feeling, the idea of booking somewhere else that may be cheaper than you might feel silly because they would think to themselves, yes, I could go with a cheaper venue, but will I have the same service? Will I have the same hospitality experience? Will the venue be as awesome as I want it to be? Probably not. So when you talk to your guests in a really professional manner, you use terminology like, it's my pleasure, what can I do to serve you, what can I grab for you? Absolutely. When you're consistently using terminology and words like that, you are setting yourself so far apart and so far ahead of the vast majority of venue owners and managers in this country. Now that we've talked through how to really create a great experience when you walk into the venue space and while you're giving a tour, let's talk about how to be strategic and more strategic about our sales process. Now, like I mentioned, your sales tour process shouldn't be around 15 minutes. It shouldn't be 20 minutes. It shouldn't even be 30 minutes. It really should be 45 minutes to an hour. And the breakdown goes like this. The first 10 to 15 minutes should be relational building. You're not going to dive right into the tour itself. What you're going to do is offer them the beverage, see if they need to use the restroom, and then sit them down in a comfortable place and get to know them. Ask them what they do for work. Ask them what their hobbies are. Talk to them about the event. What is their vision? What are things that they would really love to see happen at their event? Do they already have ideas? Do they have a Pinterest board? Give yourself a set of questions that you walk through and understand really who your guests are and what their motivation is for the event itself. An easy transition for this is, and particularly if you have individuals who are ready to talk, you can say something like, I appreciate so much you sharing so much and I'd love to hear more about you. Do you mind if we walk and talk just so I can make sure that I respect your time and we continue to tour? This signals to them that you are moving more into the tour process, but that you're still interested in what they have to say. At that point, you'll also do 1 to 2 minutes of what I call housekeeping. And housekeeping means that you are going over all of the logistics and preparing them for what actually happens during the tour. People love predictability. And so when you share what you're going to be doing in your tour, they feel like they have a clear understanding of what's going to happen next. So during that transition or housekeeping, I might say something like, just so you know what we're going to be doing next, what we'll do is we will tour the space. Please don't let me know if you have any questions as we go along. I know I'll have lots of questions for you. You may have questions for me. And don't hesitate to let me know if there's anything that you'd really like to cover during our time together. After we've toured the space, we'll come back down. You're more than welcome to refill your beverage at that time. And then we'll talk about your budget a little bit, what your overall capacity is for an event, and whether or not we might be a good fit. Does that sound okay to you? I've never had anybody say no to that, and usually people just really appreciate understanding what is actually going to happen during the process. Then you're going to move into the 20 to 25 minute part of your process where you actually tour the space. But when we are touring the space, we are going to be so strategic about how we do it. We aren't going to stand there and talk for 20 to 25 minutes while we move from room to room. Or if it's just one room, we don't want to talk about the room for 25 minutes. What we do want to do is become armed with questions in order to be strategic and get our guests thinking about how it would actually feel to host the event in your space. And we're also going to ask questions in order to clarify what their needs actually are, what might be barriers to booking with us, and what they truly want, as well as just get to know our guests more. Some ways that you might do this might be, for instance, you walk into a main ballroom area and you kind of explain that this is the ballroom and here's the typical setting for an event like they are hoping to have. Then after that, as opposed to just moving on, you could say, how do you feel about that setup? Does that encompass your vision at all? Or could you envision your event being in a space like this? That opens it up so that they are also having conversation with you about what they actually want, as opposed to just listening to you talk about how great your space is to them. You can also ask about different features that you have. As opposed to pitching that you have all of these different add-ons, you can ask it in question form. Are you pizza people? Do you enjoy photos? Have you ever thought about a photo booth? What are your thoughts on that overall? How many vendors have you already talked to? Would you like any recommendations for vendors? Keep it open-ended so that they are talking more than you are. I personally consider a really successful venue tour when you have done most of the asking and they have done most of the talking. Once you've completed your tour, then you can go ahead and transition them to move back to your original spot where you maybe sat down and had your intros and relational building time, and you're going to let them know that it's going to be time to talk about the budget and the contract. The way that I usually go about that is I will first state all of the things that they said during the tour that were really important to them or that they liked about the space. So I might say, you mentioned that you really appreciated that we had a groom suite in addition to the bridal suite. I know that you also mentioned that you're pizza people and that the pizza add-on might be of interest to you. Is there anything that I'm missing that we had talked about? And they might bring something up that they really, really enjoyed. And then you just affirm that, yes, that is something that we will talk about when it comes to the budget. And then you can just say it as simply as that. Do you mind if we go ahead and talk about your budget? They'll say yes, and you can say, all right, what type of budget did you have in mind when it came to booking a venue? Some people have a budget in mind, some people don't. If they don't, then give them a range. You can say something like, people typically have a budget range between Y and Z. Which of that range do you feel more comfortable with? Most of the time they will tell you that they're comfortable with the lower range, but you can say, given everything that you shared with me that was of interest to you, are you comfortable where if we are in the XYZ range? That is where you will really understand where they're at and if that dollar amount is something that will actually fit within what they can afford. Now, this whole conversation, again, is between 10 and 15 minutes. At that time, once you have a clear understanding of what their budget is, you can show all of your package options and talk with them about which one might fit best. Perhaps you need to talk about dates and how dates affect the price increases. If a date isn't available, are they flexible at all on their dates? Are they willing to consider a Friday or a Sunday event? Those are all of the types of questions that you want to ask during that time. Once you have had that conversation and you feel confident on what their budget is, what package is ideal, that is where I usually leave it open-ended and say, how would you like to move forward? Often you'll probably get something like, well, I'd like to talk to so-and-so, or let's give it a few days, or we have another tour lined up that we'd like to complete before we make a decision. And that's perfectly okay. But what you want to do in response to any of those reactions is just confirm what is going to happen once you leave the tour. If there's other decision makers involved, never ever leave without offering to schedule a second tour with that decision maker present. If they tell you that they have another venue tour coming up a couple days later, then propose that you follow up with them maybe a couple days after that if you don't hear from them first. We initially, of course, want them to have a clear understanding of what to do next if they want to book with you. But if we don't hear from them, we always want permission in order to follow up and confirm whether or not they want to book their event with us or not. At that point, when you have a confirmed follow-up date and you have their permission, that you can reach out to them and that they know that you will be reaching out. If you don't hear back from them, then you can part ways. And then once they have left, put down somewhere. If it's in your CRM, if it's on your calendar, I don't care where, put down your follow-up date. And if you do not hear from that individual by the date that they had said they would reach out, follow up when you said you would, because your follow through says volumes. Because potentially, if they haven't reached back out to you and they haven't made a decision, your willingness to reach back out and follow through will again signal to them that you follow through on your word and you're going to be a dependable part of the team if they decide to book their event with you. Now, I know this was a lot of information, but if you are able to take the time to put these pieces in place, be strategic with your tours, make sure that it's a fantastic experience, follow through on your word, get more tours in the door, I can tell you that you will see such massive impact on your business in the next year that you probably won't even know what to do. If you would like more extensive training on each of these different areas, if you would like sales scripts that give you all of the questions that I talked about, but I didn't have time to put into this video, you can have access to all of those things on my Skool group. Or if you make over $100,000 a year in revenue already, and you would like me to help you personally to get all of these things in place without having to DIY the entire thing, don't hesitate to reach out to me, because I am more than happy to consider working with you. And the clients that I work with personally, again, it is very, very likely that they see that 200 to 300% increase in revenue very quickly within 6 weeks of implementation. Good luck to you and happy selling.